Hello? Can everyone hear me? Yes. Okay, great. So, all people are filing in. Good evening, everyone. It's so good to be here today. Welcome to HGSE Thinks Big. So my name is Xianhui Grace Dong, and I'm the Academic Affairs Chair for HGSE Student Council. And before we begin, I just want to recognize my amazing Academic Affairs Committee. Where are they? Tree, Huynh, Wes Allen. Where is Josh? Josh is hiding outside from me. Okay. And where's Rich? Where's Rich? Okay. Well, Rich Liuzzi is also in my academic affairs committee, but most of all, I want to recognize Liz Thurston and Kevin Bjorn for their amazing support this entire event. I also want to thank the awesome six professors that we have here today. It's so amazing to have professors talk about their work outside of the classroom and see how all the theories that we've been learning in class translate directly into practice. So we thought it'd be an amazing event for you guys, for all the students, to connect with professors on a more, personal level, and also hear what they've been working on. So without further ado, I am very privileged to introduce our first speaker of the night, a person who needs no introduction whatsoever, our Dean of Faculty, James Dean Ryan. Dean James Ryan.
Can you hear me okay if I don't use the microphone? Okay. So welcome to the first ever HGSE Thinks Big. I'm delighted to be here. I'd like to begin by thanking those who organized the event, beginning with Grace, who's the chair of the Student Council's Academic Affairs Committee, along with her colleagues Tree Huynh, Rich Liuzzi, Wes Allen, Josh Willis, and then also to thank Liz and Kevin. They all deserve a round of applause. So here's what tonight will look like in a nutshell. 6 of my colleagues, Felipe, Karen, Mideline, Kay, David, and Joe, will take this stage for 10 minutes each and share their big ideas. After that, I'm told there will be a reception at the Gutman Conference Center. But if all you're looking to get out of this evening is some free food after this event, let me tell you that you're not thinking big enough. If one of the projects mentioned tonight interests you, I encourage you to talk to the faculty member about how you can get involved. If one of their presentations sparks an idea, I encourage you to get started on putting it into action. In other words, don't be bashful. The challenge before all of us at the Ed School to improve education and in doing so to create a more just society demands big ideas and bold moves. And there's no reason for you to hesitate. Let me share a quote from Robert Kennedy that I think captures the scope and the spirit of what this event is about. Some believe, he said, there's nothing one man or one woman can do against the enormous array of the world's ills, against misery, against ignorance or injustice and violence. Yet many of the world's great movements of thought and action have flowed from the work of a single man or woman. A young monk began the Protestant Reformation. A young general extended an empire from Macedonia to the borders of the earth. And a young woman reclaimed the territory of France. It was a young Italian explorer who discovered the New World and a 32-year-old Thomas Jefferson who proclaimed that all men are created equal. And so it continues today. It was a young woman, after all, from the Swat Valley in Pakistan who, even after being shot in the head for promoting education, stood before the United Nations General Assembly and declared that one child, one teacher, one pen, and one book can change the world. For those of you who were at orientation last fall, you may remember me saying that the world needs you. It needs you because no one else has the position, the privilege, and the potential that you have. You're studying at Harvard. You share these halls with some of the greatest minds on the planet, faculty and student alike. The ideas that will change the world can be born here, but only if you resist the comfort and ease of solving small problems. I challenge you to accept the responsibility that comes with being in this place. I challenge you to think big. Thank you.
Thank you, James Ryan, for that wonderful welcome remarks. We're going to start also by introducing our first professor of the night, well, second professor, because Dean Ryan is also a professor, Felipe Barrera-Osorio. Thank you.
Thank you. Probably I will not do that. So, thank you very much. It's very nice to be here. It's very nice to be part of this conference. I prepared my presentation. I didn't prepare a PowerPoint because I want this to be more relaxed. So let me start by saying the following. I think that there is a problem with the title of the conference. I don't think that there is a small idea. I think that any idea is worth to pursue. And I think that whatever idea you have, it is important. And I think that probably you are going to think, oh, that idea, everyone has the idea. But there is always an angle. There is always another way to see all ideas. So let me tell you about my all ideas that have been around forever. And these are my ideas on my research agenda. So I want to start with a broad perspective of what I'm doing at Harvard, and then I'm going to zoom in one type of my ideas on my research agenda. I have been working in the following three topics. I have been working in public-private partnerships, I have been working in teacher incentives, and I have been working in family incentives. What is the common thread of those three very, very similarly unrelated topics? The common thread are two. The first one is I ground my research in theory of incentives. I believe that whatever we do, whatever policy we do, that creates different incentives and people respond to those incentives. So I ground my research trying to understand what is the response of different actors to education and to the policies that we are going that we are implementing. The second one is all my research agenda is based in quantitative analysis with clear identification strategy. That means that I want to answer the following question. What is the consequence of implementing a policy, for instance? So it's always the search for causal effects that drives my research agenda. So those are the big topics. And now let me go to the more specific topic that I want to talk today, is the topic of public-private partnership. I have been working in three evaluations that try to get to this, what is to the answer of the question, what is the impact of public-private partnership? And the basic idea of these three interventions in three different parts of the world are very simple, is that the government still plays a very important role in education, but there is a strong separation between the financial part and the provision part. The first project that I am going to talk is the Punjab Public-Private Partnership. It's in the country of Pakistan. Punjab is one of the biggest districts in Pakistan. And this program is very simple, and the idea is the following. The government provides financial support to any kids that goes to these schools, but the schools, in order to become part of the program, the average test of the kids in that school has to pass certain level, and after they become partners, they have to keep increasing the average test scores. That's what we call a strong accountability system, in the sense that the government is imposing that the school needs to show some results in standardized tests. It has a lot of problems. Accountability systems are a difficult issue, And any person working in accountability system in the United States knows that there are a lot of incentives that program plays. But that's the first problem that I'm going to talk about. The second problem is very similar, is in Uganda. In Uganda, the problem was the following. The government says, look, we don't have the capacity to absorb all the demand of the kids that are coming to the school. So we have classes that have 200 kids, and we need to reduce that number of kids in classes. How do we do it? And one of the programs is this public partnership, in which basically the government is offering money to the kids if they want to go to private schools. The private school has to have a minimum conditions, and any kids that are right to the private school is served. The third problem is the SIN public-private partnership program, in which what we did was a little bit different. We said, okay, we are going to provide subsidies for entrepreneurs to open schools in locations that there are no schools. And basically, we called for bids. The entrepreneurs told us, look, the locations in which I can open schools are this, this, and this. And basically, we did a lottery, and we give money to the, well, not we, the government give money to the entrepreneurs, and the entrepreneurs open schools in those locations. So those are the three programs that I want to talk. Why is that interesting? It's interesting in two accounts. One is that in economics, there is the following very powerful idea, is that the government should intervene when there is a market failure. And in this case, the intervention of the government is very clear because the returns to primary education are very high for the society. However, the returns for the individuals are very low. So the whole society will benefit from all this education, but the individuals are not investing in education. The second point is that even more, the individuals who can start the schools, the belief was, the returns for starting the schools were not quite there, and therefore the private sector will not be willing to open those schools. So if you read the textbooks from the 80s, you will find things like the government should intervene, and the intervention is the government who need to start the schools. In the 90s, something started happening, and especially in the Asian countries, in India, Pakistan, and basically what happened was the private sector started being very, very aggressive, entering places in which the government was not present. So it seems that there was some space from the private sector action. So these two ideas, on one hand, the government needing to intervene, and on the other hand, the private sector being very effective to reach places in which the government were not able to intervene, create the following kind of paradox. The government knows they need to intervene, but they don't have the capacity, and therefore, some of governments start in a very practical way, some governments start doing public-private partnerships. And that, for me, from the policy point of view, is very interesting. The second point that is interesting is about the theory of private provision. There is a long tradition in economics that it's due to an economist called Milton Friedman, in which he said, look, if we can use a choice, giving the choice to parents, the whole system will increase in quality. You can give vouchers. The parents will try to go to better schools. If they go to private schools, the public schools will react, and quality will increase. However, that theory has, again, several problems. One of the problems is that it can be sorted. It can be that the type of parents that stay in the public sector are very different from the type of parent that goes to the private sector. And the second problem is that the private sector, the schools, can start choosing kids that are better off than the other ones, can start choosing kids that are academically more stronger than the other ones. So this idea of choice is a fundamental idea in economics, and therefore this public-private partnership provides an opportunity to try to test these ideas. And so how these theories attach to my research? So in the same public-private partnership, we test the idea that we can create a market. Remember, this is the program in which we give money to the entrepreneurs, and the entrepreneurs arrive to one place in which they have the new school. In another place, they don't have, the community don't have the school. And what we did was, again, we did this lottery, and we choose places to establish one school in one place and not in another. And after 2 years, we had been following these places, and we find something that is quite remarkable. Well, one thing is not remarkable. The enrollment rates in the place in which we start new schools increase in a very, very large number, 30% points higher in the places in which we have the schools versus, for instance, 30% higher in those schools. And the second thing that is remarkable is that the learning measuring test increases a lot in these kids that goes to private schools. So those two effects we were able to measure basically doing this experiment and trying to measure the contrast between public and private, between the treatment and the control groups. The second experiment, the one in Punjab, we test the idea that private schools, if we provide strong accountability measures, they will react and they will provide better education than private schools. And this is a tricky idea because of the following. If you provide, in this program, if you provide money for children attended in these schools, again, what the probability is that the schools will choose stronger kids. And what we need to contrast is kids in one type of schools versus another, but it has to be the same type of kids. And basically what we found is that these schools, when they have a strong accountability measure, and when the level of education is very low, actually can provide better education. So we found that these schools are providing a very important learning environment for these kids. And the final project, the one of Uganda, is a project, to recap, Uganda is the project in which is very similar to the Punjab PPP. However, there is no accountability system in Uganda. And basically, our hypothesis was that the only thing that the schools will do is just to pick the best students. And we found exactly that. We found that in Uganda, what is happening is that the vast majority of the effects is because the schools are picking up the best kids. So what are the implications from the point of view of policy? On one hand, we have some evidence that is telling me that the private sector is very powerful as a driver for education. On the other hand, it's telling me that it may be there are some problems with the system when you, for instance, allow the schools to choose the kids. So one implication from policy is, for instance, that the government has to ensure that the schools will accept any kid that arrive and knock in their door. And that's one of the recommendations that we have been doing in all these projects. So, and the final idea that I had been thinking very seriously these days is the following. When you have public-private partnerships, you have something that kills the price system. There is no price when you have this public-private partnership. The schools cannot charge for these kids. And that has some implications on the theory of competition, because parents will arrive to these schools, but they don't know what will be the price that will be charged because the government will pay for the kids. So there is kind of a tension, again, in that sense, in which the public-private partnership can increase the level of education. However, it's killing one of the most important signals of the market, which is price. So these discussions about public-private partnerships are very ideological driven in a lot of countries. When you start talking about private provision of public education, there is a lot of ideology involved in this discussion. Part of my hope is that you need to show the data. You need to show if it works or not. And if it doesn't work, why? And if it works, why? So I think that one of the rules that I am committed to do is to try to shed some light in these issues using very strong data and trying to find very credible studies. And that's my small idea. Thank you.
Dr. Karen Brennan, an assistant professor of education here at HGSE. Dr. Brennan received her PhD from the MIT Media Lab, where she worked closely with Dr. Mitchell Resnick as a member of the Lifelong Kindergarten Research Group. While I could go on and on extolling the many virtues of Karen as a teacher and as an academic, she requested a minimalist introduction this evening, and I'm happy to oblige her because, as you'll soon see, her work speaks for itself. Please join me now in welcoming Dr. Karen Brennan to the stage.
Thank you so much, Josh. Hi, everybody. It's really thank you to the organizers for the invitation to participate. Thank you to all of you for being here. I love thinking about getting stuck and then, of course, hopefully getting unstuck. So that's what I wanted to do with my time this evening. This is a picture of me working with a teacher. For the past 6 years, my research activities have been primarily focused on working with teachers to think about how they might include the Scratch programming language in their classroom activities. With Scratch, you create interactive media by snapping together programming instruction blocks, just as you might build something in the physical world by snapping Lego bricks together. And you can create all sorts of things with Scratch: stories, games, animation, art. As a sampler, there's a virtual keyboard. There's a simulation of air traffic control. There's even a book report of Beowulf. I work with a wide range of teachers, K-12, college and beyond, across curricular areas, teachers who know a lot about computers and computer science, teachers who don't know very much about computers and computer science, teachers who are terrified of computers. And one way in which I've been supporting these teachers is that I built an online community called Scratch Ed. Scratch Ed was launched in 2009 and has more than 11,000 members now. On Scratch Ed, you can share stories, you can exchange resources, you can find other educators, and you can ask and answer questions. And I've learned a lot about teachers' concerns on Scratch Ed. Probably the biggest concern that I hear from teachers is that they're going to introduce Scratch in the classroom, they're going to have their students engage in these interesting open-ended projects, and then the student is going to face this intractable problem. They're going to have no idea what to do, and the teacher's worried that they're not going to know what to do. So they tell me, I'm afraid of getting stuck. I'm afraid of not knowing what to do. I'm afraid of not knowing how to help this young learner. Fair enough. That sounds a little scary. And when you open up Scratch for the first time, this is pretty intimidating. You basically have a blank slate to create absolutely whatever you want to do. But this authoring environment is accompanied by an online community where hundreds of thousands of kids have created and shared millions of projects. So I wondered, well, how are these kids who maybe are working at home on their own without the support of a teacher. How are they dealing with this challenge of getting stuck? So I've been interviewing and studying kids in the online community for several years, and they tend to group into 3 clusters. The first cluster, you've got kids who encounter Scratch and they just don't get it. They don't know what it is, they don't know why it might be important to them, and they just sort of walk away from it. That's the meh category, they're not really sure. The next category is kids, they see it, they get it, they're excited about it, they have a lot of support at home. Maybe their parents have some technical background, they have a lot of preparatory privilege. We'll put them to the side as well. That's the middle category of I have lots of support. I'm really intrigued by this third category. These kids who don't really know what Scratch is, they don't really know what it can do, but they're really excited about it, and they don't have support at home, and they're determined to figure it out on their own. So I went to this third category of kids, and I said to them, well, how do you do it? How do you get unstuck? What advice would you have for teachers who are afraid of getting stuck on a tricky programming problem? So I thought I'd share with you these kids' top 5 getting unstuck strategies. These are kids mostly between the ages of 8 and 15. First strategy, read through your code. This probably seems kind of evident, but a surprising, perhaps even shocking number of kids that they would build a project, if it didn't work right away, they would just throw it out. Imagine writing an essay and there's a typo in your essay and you just discarded the whole thing. That doesn't make sense. So these kids realized that this was not a sustainable pathway to creating things in the world, so they said, read through your code, try and find the bug. But what happens if you can't find the bug? This led to strategy number 2, experiment with your code. If you've read through, you don't know what's wrong with it, their recommendation is take the blocks, shuffle them around, see if inspiration or serendipity strikes. One young Scratcher compared it to the game Bananagrams. I don't know how many of you know this. This is sort of the tile-based word game. So just like that, shuffle the words around, shuffle the letters around to create new words. Strategy number 3, look for examples. The Scratch online community has more than 4.6 million projects. So say you want to make a side-scroller platformer game. Well, you can probably find it in the online community. Look for an example, look for another example, compare the implementations, and develop your own. Strategy number 4, work with someone else. From collaborating to consulting, kids talked extensively about the value of teaming up with others. And strategy number 5, be persistent. I love this one in particular because kids talked about the enormous challenge they face when encountering something like Scratch, but how enormously gratifying it is to overcome a major hurdle. They acknowledged, however, that although it's good to be persistent, and as one 9-year-old told me, you need to have grit, which I really loved, they also acknowledged that you also need to know when to take a break. Sometimes you just need to call time, and I thought this was really beautifully expressed by 11-year-old Jensen, who said, sometimes I get myself so dug in a hole that I have to just get out of Scratch for the day, because after a lot of programming, your head hurts. It's not easy to program with a hurting head. So let's come back to the teachers. How did the strategies of the kids help us think about and support teachers? Well, very pragmatically, the kids' strategies are strategies that teachers could use when facing a tricky programming problem. But I think there's actually a more important lesson to be learned from these kids' experiences. And this is what I frequently tell teachers. The students don't need you in the way you think they need you. They don't need you to be the expert. They don't need you to have all of the answers. They don't need you to solve all of their problems. I think where we're getting stuck is not on tricky programming problems. We're actually sort of getting stuck on outdated visions of teaching and learning. You know, it's not about the sage on the stage. It's not about the teacher at the front of the room. Magical things happen when kids define and pursue and struggle with big problems, when kids are teaching other kids, where they're teaching the teachers, and of course, when the teachers are helping the students as well. So that's what I think about when I think about getting unstuck. Thank you.
Hi. Hi, my name is Vo Huynh, and I represent the Teacher Education Program, and I have the honor of introducing Dr. Catherine Merceth. As one of the most popular classes at Harvard College, Dr. Case Merced's course in U.S. World 35, Dilemmas of Equity and Excellence in American Education, is often packed with eager students participating in one of the most important discussions of their college years. Out of 5 possible points, U.S. World 35 was rated an unprecedented 4.82, making it the highest ranking course according to student survey. Many of you here might have taken her school reform class. Students often point to Dr. Merced's deep investment in each lecture as key to building such a successful class. Her commitment to education is evident in years of teaching, first as a math teacher, and now as one of the most well-recognized professors here at HGSE. She unfailingly takes the time outside of class to connect with her student as a thesis advisor, as a director of the teacher education program, and most importantly, as a reliable mentor. She has authored a number of case studies, many of which have been used in education courses throughout the country to illustrate the complexities of the classroom. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Catherine Merced as she discusses the importance of teaching.
Free, that was lovely. No, I'm fine. I'm fine. Well, good evening, everyone. I'm so glad that you're here and that you're taking a little time out of your lives to hear some big ideas. My big idea actually may not be so new. Which way am I going? Going the wrong way here? Somebody help me find my PowerPoint slide. That is, oh, I know what happened. Yours got put in front of mine, I'll bet. I should be using this one, not your computer. That helps. Yes, okay. So, as I say, my idea may not be new, but my passion and my commitment, I hope, will overwhelm you tonight. So, I want you, each and every one of you, to consider teaching either as a short or a long-time career. Now, many of you immediately thought of a 4th grade classroom teacher. There are many, many forms of teaching that I want you to broaden your vision of and think about how you can impact the life of a child, of an adult, of a colleague, of a peer, of any human being that you come into contact with. We know the importance of a teacher. We know that the main influence on student achievement is the quality of the teacher in teaching. But I sort of crossed out that word achievement because I think it's more important. I think it's bigger. I think the importance of the teacher is to influence the well-being, the physical, the mental, the emotional, the social capacity of a human being that is in your contact, in your area. Now, why do I want you to consider teaching? The first point, and I feel this so desperately, is that the only way this country will ever meet the needs of all of its citizens is to have a capable, thoughtful, committed teachers in front of them. Again, think of teaching more broadly, not just in the classrooms, but all the other ways that individuals can engage in the act of teaching. The other issue, the other reason I want you to give this very careful consideration is that the future of our society depends on our children. Children represent 20% of our population, and they are 100% of our future. Indeed, they're going to have to pay my Social Security pretty soon. Why am I hopeful? You can say, well, there's all this teacher bashing. We know how badly schools are doing. Okay, you're just talking up the wrong tree. Who wants to be a teacher in this environment? I'm very, very hopeful for the following reason. Picture a big old fat elementary school. Maybe yours look like this: columns, steps, and a remarkable thing happens every September in this country. Picture a 5-year-old, a kindergartner, first day, walking up these steps to this great big building. The caretaker is holding their hand, maybe hiding a little bit behind the skirt or the trousers, and they're walking into this big institution. And the caretaker walks this child up, looks perhaps on a piece of paper and says, "Oh, I see. Kindergarten is room 104. And the adult, the caretaker, the brother, the sister, the mother, the father, the guardian, takes this child down to room 104 and says to the adult in the room, "Here, I give you my child." That is the most remarkable event that happens September after September after September. Americans have faith that our schools will treat children well, that they will help them become all that that caregiver wants for that child. This is the faith that we need to capitalize on. We need not to squander it. We need not to forget the hope, the picture that that caregiver gives for that little 5-year-old. And so I'm hopeful because that hope is so strong despite all the challenges that we face in society. We know that the quality of an education system cannot exceed the quality of the teachers, the folks in it. So this is a more traditional view of the classroom. But I want to tell you why I teach, and Tree was very sweet to mention that I really pour my heart and soul in this. And here's why I teach and why I want you to consider teaching. The first reason that I teach is that because when I teach, I learn, and I love to learn. And I think most of you would say you love to learn. That's why you're here. That's why you're studying. That's why you're involved. You're working hard. You love to learn. The second reason that I love to teach is that I am constantly challenged. I'm never bored. It's never a regular job. When I get up in the morning, I can't wait to get to that classroom to see what's going to unfold. And the reality is, no two classes, no two students, no 2 years are exactly the same. So it's like we all hop on the toboggan together at the top of the hill, and we take a ride. And we don't know if it'll go fast, we don't know if it'll go slow, we don't know if we'll go into a tree, or if we'll go out onto the ice on the lake and spin around. But it's so exciting, and it's so challenging. I teach because I love my subject matter. I could talk all day, like all of these faculty members here could talk all day about their work and their subject and what they teach. I teach because I love the puzzle of communicating my passion to the students and of connecting. Here's this idea, how best can I teach it? Asking myself that puzzle and trying to solve it. And I teach, finally, and perhaps most importantly, because as David Cohen has said, teaching is a human endeavor. It's about relationships. It's about emotion. It's about thinking. It's about creativity. It's about communicating. And it's really about being human. What you need to teach well, if you decide to become a traditional classroom teacher or a mentor or a coach, you need some content knowledge, you need some pedagogical knowledge, you need psychological knowledge of the child and adult development. You need something that you're talking about. You just can't do dances on the stage with no substance. But you also need what I might call the softer skills, the ability and the willingness to take a risk, the ability and the willingness to learn from mistakes. And everyone makes mistakes. Everyone. The fortitude, both emotional and physical. We talk about emotional staying in the game, but teaching is a physical act. You stand on your feet, you move around, you talk to people, you engage, you lean in. That's physical. You can't do that if you're not in good shape. You need support, both inside and outside of people acknowledging. And I've been most fortunate to have folks acknowledge the teaching that I do. And it's just like throwing gasoline on a fire. It makes me want to work harder and harder and harder. And finally, you need humility and empathy. You need to understand how your students are reacting. One of my favorite quotes about teaching is, teaching is like putting letters in a mailbox. You know when they're mailed, but you never know how they're received or in what form. And so the more that you can think about, how is this going over? How is this being received? So finally, I want to talk about a big new idea, a couple of big new ideas. And these are pathways to teaching. It's work that a faculty committee has been working on, and it's very broad-based, and it's very early. Nothing is in concrete. The first part is thinking about the Harvard College undergraduates, which, as you heard from Tree, I spend a lot of time with. I spend a lot of time teaching them. And one is the possibility when you're an undergraduate to become a teacher. Some people come to Harvard College with that intent. This morning, I had an email from a parent saying, my daughter was just admitted to Harvard. She'd like to come to your class and watch you teach. That's remarkable, really, at an institution like this. So we have an undergraduate way that you can do it concurrently with your studies, or we are thinking about something called the Harvard Teacher Fellowship, a way that we can take Harvard College seniors right when they're on that cusp of about to leave, some of them quite smug, but also underneath, if you scratch the surface, a little bit terrified about what life after Harvard really means. So we're beginning to develop some ideas about capitalizing on that energy, on that interest. And I've felt it through my years here grow. They are truly interested in education. We're talking about, again, being developed, not yet there. We have an Institute of Politics. Many of you have probably gone to the Kennedy School. You hear speeches, you get jobs, you hear wonderful people come. Why don't we have an Institute of Education right here at the Graduate School of Education? Another action we're talking about is an education studies minor. You don't have to minor, you don't have to major in education. How about a minor? That's for the undergraduates. For the graduates from other colleges, folks who did their undergraduate degree elsewhere, we're thinking hard about how to make the teacher education program relevant in today's market. The market has changed. The landscape is different than it was 15 or 20 years ago. People could go to residencies. They can go to TFA. What's our response? Surely we can think creatively and do better. So I've put down here graduates of other colleges. I've always thought that we need to be thinking about parents, because parents are the child's first teacher. And so what are we doing for parents in our institution? For the higher education faculty all over the country, my question is, why doesn't the Ed School develop a teaching and learning institute? A place where you go and talk about teaching, whether you're a historian or an engineering science teacher. For alumni, people who've graduated from here, and for current teachers, I have two ideas. One is our programs in professional education. What are we doing for people that are working in the classrooms day in and day out? We could do more. And then finally, and this is an idea I fell in love with quite a long time ago, which is called Honor a Teacher. Every one of you somewhere was touched by a teacher. If I ask you to take a moment and think about that person, I bet someone comes to mind immediately. You can see them, you can see the context. Why not honor that person? The way I want to honor them, sorry, Dean Ryan, but I want to use the halls of our classrooms, like the Vietnam Memorial, and put the names of the teachers that our students have honored on the walls in perpetuity. Imagine this classroom filled with teachers' names that made a difference in the lives of our students. So finally, teacher comes in many shapes and many forms. As I said, classroom teachers, coaches, parents, friends, counselors, siblings, spiritual leaders. Everyone in this room has the potential to be a teacher. Every one of you. And everyone has been touched by a teacher. So now I ask you in closing, please take the card that you were given at the door. And take a moment of reflection, and on that card, write down the name of the teacher who came to your mind as someone who was impactful in your life. Write that name down. Get into that feeling. What was special about that? I'd like everyone to write down the name of that teacher. And as a final act, I ask you to find that teacher, to Google that teacher. If that teacher is no longer with us, perhaps find the school or the family of the teacher and send them a note and tell them that they made all the difference in the world to you. They made a connection. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Kay, for that wonderful presentation on the importance of teaching. We wanted to introduce our next speaker, who is a developmental neuropsychologist, a researcher, an educator, renowned professor for 30 years, and on top of that, a family guy who has been married for over 44 years. He is the founder of CAST, to improve education for all learners, and has been renowned worldwide for the universal design for learning. Please join me in introducing David Rose.
I think I'm okay. Just in the transition, I want to say that I remember Mrs. Rudnick in the 6th grade in Carroll City Elementary School, Miami, Florida. And I have to say I had the honor of going back to visit her, thinking she's going to be so happy to see me because I, went to Harvard College. I teach at the Harvard Graduate School of Education and all this. And I thought, boy, is she going to feel? So I went into her classroom. I said, "I'm little David Rose," and she had no memory of me whatsoever. But at any rate, I felt great. So I'm not going to talk about Mrs. Rudnick. I want to talk about Udio, a web-based platform for reading, and I'll try to do it in 10 minutes. This is the output of it, data, and this is a data visualization that comes out of kids operating, and we'll talk about it later. But I think any visualization whose data output, primary data output, is Beyonce, is clearly got good data. And we'll get to why that would happen. The problem that we're trying to address is struggling readers. The U.S. government put out a call for National Center on Emerging Technology and Literacy. But what we argued, the big idea that I want to talk about is that we proposed that, in fact, the problem wasn't struggling readers, it was struggling readers who are not struggling anymore. And our work, as some of you know, has been largely with kids who are in the margins, kids who have disabilities, kids who are English language learners and stuff, for whom traditional schooling has not been working well. And a lot of these kids, this is aimed at middle school and up, these kids have stopped struggling. So that's not the problem. They're not struggling. So I think we won the competition for this center. It was a $10 million center, so it was big, and lots of people applied for it. And I think we won it because we didn't actually talk about phonics or reading comprehension strategies. We talked about motivation. We talked about these kids are in need of recovery. They are refugees from reading. We have to do something very different than we've been doing. So our program isn't about phonics or anything like that. It's about reading recovery. And essentially, it's about child recovery. Our partners in this are CAST, which is where I work when I'm not here, Vanderbilt, Arizona. But Felipe, I want to say that we actually are a private-public partnership. We are partnering with a number of for-profits in this venture, which I'll explain in a moment. One of the first partners was Scholastic, which we've done a lot of work with in the past. So just some bit about relevant work, because lots of people don't know what we do. So our approach is universal design for learning. How do we use modern technology to design learning environments that are more accessible, more supportive, more welcoming, and more effective for a broader range of students than our traditional curricula are. So we have guidelines that we operate with. Their evidence-based practices that if you can build them into modern technologies. They're hard to build into things like textbooks or blackboards because they're not flexible enough. Modern technologies, we can build these kinds of options and alternatives into them directly so that more kids have success. So the guidelines are at the bottom of it. We've created things, this we did with Google, to create universal design for learning editions of classic texts of various kinds. It's called of the wild, where the level of support that kids get varies, and you can get so that it's quite ornate, and kids are getting mentoring while they're reading, and they're getting just-in-time support, and they're being asked to think about their reading, and if they're not good decoders, they can get decoding support. If they don't have good vocabulary, they can get vocabulary support. If they're not English readers, they can get support in their language. Things like that are built into the reading environment. So we've been doing that for some time. So in this particular competition for the center, our approach again was, we said it was called the competition was for the Center for Emerging Technology and Literacy. And so we said the most powerful emerging technology was the web itself. We didn't want to make apps or little programs about diphthong bombs or something. We wanted to, in fact, take the advantages of the web itself as our platform. And we said the most powerful lever again, and I said some of this before, is that we needed to approach these kids as refugees and build up a sense of efficacy for them and a sense that reading would be important. It's valuable enough to put some struggle into. I'm with Karen on them. We wanted them to struggle, but we've got to give them a reason worth struggling for. So what we did was say we needed kids to have a lot of choice. Most of schooling doesn't give them much choice. It says, here's your lesson for today, you're all going to do it. And what we wanted to go the other way, say, you know what, you need a ton of choice. Find something you actually would like to read, and we'll provide the support on the web so you can read that. So start with what you want to read, we'll start there. And choice in how to learn, choices in why you read, et cetera, things like this. I don't have time to go into this. And of course, when and where you read, so making sure that you can read on the bus if you need to. So here's I didn't check to see if I have a little pointer. Oh, I see one. Remarkable technology. So here's our conceit, was that we would take sites that already exist on the web. We didn't want to create any new content. Plenty of content out there. We didn't want to be in the content generation. So what we want to do is take content that's already there and recreate it in a universal design for learning edition so that people can get the support when they get there. Kids can get the support, they can read what they want, but they get the support to be able to do that. So we said, we'll start with a few known players, Scholastic being one. So we're taking their e-readers and we're just remaking them just a little bit so that everybody can use them within the UDO system. One of our partners is the Smithsonian, so they have fabulous content, but nobody goes there because it's, in fact, much too high a reading level for the exact people they want to reach. We hit sort of a gold mine when we went to them because they have just had sort of a crisis of confidence about what they are. Are they really the nation's attic, or are they an educational institution? And they decided they need to be an educational institution. But then they looked at their demographics, and only rich kids from upper middle class families ever go to the Smithsonian. So when we hit them with, we'd like to make your website so that everybody could come there, whether they're English language learners, whether they're kids with disabilities, so everybody can come to your site. And they said, fabulous, sold. So Smithsonian, instead of us paying them, they said, we'll pay you if we can do this. Everything, all sorts of sites that, in fact, we've been approached. What's fabulous is after we just did some trial runs, which I'll explain in just a minute, we've now had like Sports Illustrated for Kids, Time, et cetera, come to us and say, hey, we'd like you to put our stuff into UDO, which is what we had hoped would happen. So anyway, we hope there'll be thousands, literally thousands and thousands of things that kids could go by their interest and learn to read. And in the middle is a hub, which I don't really have time enough to explain, but it's a place where the kid is going to be their home, where they can track their own progress, where they can communicate with their friends, show off their stuff, things like that. So that's their literacy home. Content, we've done a trial now, and we started with just 4 kinds of content, 4 content providers. Scholastic, as I said, they gave us their stuff free to use, which is great. SERP Institute, which is housed here, Catherine Snow, head of that project, and I think some of you know that. Great, fabulous program with all this rich content. It was all paper-based, and you couldn't get to it. So we're doing it to make it entirely available on the web so that kids all over can get to it, and we can make it actually universally designed. CAST, we've got some stuff. Our stuff is the weakest of the 4, and the Smithsonian and so on. These are our trial partners. Just say, the one for-profit, one a big institution, one us, one a researchy kind. We wanted to kind of have that mix so people could say, we're one of those. Maybe we could be in UDO too. New partners are coming. Sorry, this clicks too slow for me. Here's the partners that have either approached us or that we've approached recently, and they've said, okay, we'll do this. Now, what we found, because we're doing a lot of our research now with the kids, every 2 weeks we revise what we've done by working with the kids, and we find out they don't care, actually. It's fabulous to do the research directly with kids. They all thought it was boring to have Sports Illustrated for kids. They want real Sports Illustrated when you really test it. And they actually don't think Smithsonian's interesting at all. What they most wanted was Bop Tiger Beat, which I never heard of, and some of you might not have heard of. But at any rate, we're incredibly Catholic about this. And if they want to start their reading with Bop Tiger Beat, we're going to work with Bop Tiger Beat. And so, because we can get thousands of kids reading if we go there. And some of these this is listening edition, learning to listen and learn comprehension by listening instead of just reading. One of the things that we are creating then is a way in which you can get support while you're reading. I don't have time to do too much of this, but when you're in UDO, you have your own browser that allows you to get support. Every word reads itself aloud. If it's in English and you want it to be in Spanish, you can say, give it to me in Spanish, and all of those things, and you can rate things and do all of that stuff. When you go out on the web, the main thing is that the browser, this extension of the browser, gives you support out on the web so that you're able to read what you want, even though you don't have the vocabulary that it has and you don't have the decoding, et cetera, you can get the support. But you go ahead and read high-level stuff, no dumbed-down stuff, which is why they don't want Sports Illustrated for kids. And we think that's great. They want the real Sports Illustrated, so we got to amp up the support so they can get real Sports Illustrated. Then we'll have motivated readers. So anyway, that's the kind of conceit we have. And I'll show it live if I have time. I've got 2 minutes, so I'll show it quick in slides, and it looks boring in slides. It's kind of animated and exciting and real. So you sign in. You have a dashboard that looks like this, which, is usual stuff for kids. This is you and your friends and all that. Here's what you've been working on lately. Here's the things that either your friends or the system has recognized. You might be interested in these things, but you can always go and explore everything. And mainly, you can create things. You can take the stuff that you're learning and create stuff. And at first, everybody thought, kids aren't going to create stuff. Actually, they've been creating a lot more than we would ever thought. So here's what it looks like when you land on just what are the websites I could go to? And we only have, like hundreds now, but I will obviously have thousands. Then you can create a project. And the projects, I have to say, Karen, I've thought many times of wanting to talk to you because the projects are organized much like Scratch in that what we do is say to kids, okay, what do you want to do? Do you want to review something? Do you want to debate it? Do you want to teach it? So we're, again, going for high-level stuff. And if you click that, then you'll get up a template that says, okay, here's the things you do in a review. And it looks a lot like Scratch, except not so beautifully designed. It says, you'll need an intro. You'll need a one side of the argument, like this. And so it scaffolds them in that same way that Scratch does to say, there are things in a program that we call debating something or reviewing it or teaching it. And if you do those things, you'll have a good one. What happens, though, is it puts it out in a much more palatable, this is just a kid's thing. I think I faked out the top so it wouldn't have the name. But they look great. They look modern. They look like, and they are. They're a website. So the kids go, okay, it's not a hokey little thing I made for my teacher. I'm now producing for the web. And then other students can read the web. So what we found is that, in fact, the most popular things in the web are increasingly the other students' projects. And one of the things that has turned out to be probably the most heartwarming thing is that we have a preferential project where we're working with kids that are very, very disabled. We're talking about cognitive disabilities, multiple disabilities, where UDO wasn't really designed for them. But the scaffolding is so rich and strong, and the stuff is so interesting that it's just explosive what's happening there, and it's now our favorite kind of population, because what happens is their projects look like this too, and they're just like, literally cry, like, holy cow, I made that, and I'm on the web, and my mommy can see it at home, and it's just unbelievable. So it's heartwarming stuff. Isn't that amazing how it can come out of technology? I just want to end with just what data looks like. So if you create a project, you choose a style. I want it to look sort of like me or whatever you're going to do. And then we can check and see, well, what do kids like for styles? And I love it that, this is it. But then we can look for differences. Well, what are, girls and boys? How do they choose different styles for their projects? This is low-level stuff, but we get a little bit better. What kind of types? We only have reviewing or debating or teaching right now. So what do they choose? Well, here's what they choose. They review most. But actually, there's gender whoops. Did I cut out? I guess I left out a slide. Girls and boys choose different things they want to do. Who knew? And we, in UDO, because it's a universal design, we actually allow kids to respond in multiple ways. They don't have to write. If they're not good writers, they can record. They can make videos. They can do all sorts of things. And so we just said, well, what do kids actually make? So here's their choices. Wherever they are, they can either write, draw, or record. And so by grade level, it really changes. And I think, well, I left out what it changed by gender and stuff. We can see, what do they like doing? Do they like writing or recording? And it changes with expertise. As they get better at it, they start to write more. But actually, they also explore speaking as a piece of literacy, and more of them are recording their speeches. They choose, again, I said this, they choose either projects that are recommended by usual engines. Your friends like this, or kids like you like this, that kind of thing. Or things they want to do, and also, as I said, very popular, reading their friends' stuff, and they comment back and forth between, so we have this reciprocal teaching thing going on where kids are commenting on each other's projects back and forth. Works very well. And then we can study, what are they really doing? So the green is the reading of kids' projects on a topic. And you can see in a lot of cases, more kids are reading each other's projects than are reading the original sources, which we think is a great literacy exercise. And lastly, here we can find out what kind of supports are kids using. So the gray bars are using text-to-speech, that browser extension that allows them to click on any word and get support. And we can find out which articles, and it turns out kids are choosing. For really hard articles, they choose on text-to-speech to say, you know what, decoding's not what I want to worry about here. I want to worry about the content. So we like it when they're disciplined, thoughtful users of this to say, if it's a really high-level text, maybe I'll get support. So anyway, that's what we're after. And the key goal is that all of this information is fed to kids, not to teachers or us alone, but to kids so that they can become monitors of their own progress to see, this is the things you like, and this is the things that you find supportive. And I just thought I preloaded. Here's the dashboard live. And kids can see, oh, here's what I've been working on. Yellow things are my comments. Here's what I've been commenting. Blue things are the articles I've read, and red things are my projects. But there's all kinds of ways we can visualize this data for the kids. They can, example, say, what are the topics that you've been reading about? And, oh, what happened? Did it just go away? Has nothing been showing up there? Have I been talking this whole talk with nothing? We may not, that was the sexy part of the whole talk, I'm sorry. This is my family home in Nova Scotia, Canada, just in case you were wondering. I think we're at time. I should stop. So anyway, it allows kids to quickly. Well, is he going to make it? Oh yeah. So here's so I can see what I've done. For example, I can see what have I been doing the last 5 times. I can see here's the things I've been working on the last 5 sessions. I can see them all. And I can see them organized by topics or by what my friends like or things like that to say, oh, wow. And then what we want to do is have conversations, though. A teacher can then talk to a student and say, gee, you haven't been doing anything in art. Did you ever think about art? We never want to impose. We're not into adaptive intelligence where the computer's getting smart and telling you what to do. But what we want is feedback so kids can go, well, I don't know, maybe I might look at an art one. What the heck, okay? But you can see you've done a lot on rights. You've done a lot of these things. Kids start to learn about who they are as learners, what they like, and so on. Anyway, so our big idea is start, as we should start with everything, start with the kids, who they are, start with motivation first. Why would you care about reading? And how can we make it so that you care about yourself as a reader? Anyway, that's it. Bye.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Wes Allen. I am the Higher Education Program Senator, and I have the distinct pleasure of introducing our final speakers of the night, Mideline Fletcher and Joseph Zollner, who will be sharing their big ideas on the professional programs in professional education, or PPE. Mideline Fletcher is the director of the Pre-K through 12 and International Program for PPE. She received her PhD in International Development and Education from NYU. Mideline's research has focused on the reorganization of teacher education in democratic South Africa. In addition to serving on the board of directors for South Africa Partners, Mideline is a certified mediator with the Harvard Mediation Program and helps to resolve disputes at Roxbury Municipal Court. Joe Zollner is a lecturer on education, senior director of programs, and senior director at the Harvard Institutes for Higher Education, also known as HIHE, in the Office of Programs and Professional Education. As the HIHE senior director, he is responsible for the quality, relevance, and a variety of professional development programs offered here at HGSE. Joe is an alumnus of the HGSE, and he's received his master's in education and an EDD in higher education. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Mideline Fletcher and Joe Zollner.
I'm just Joe Zollner. I'm not Mideline Fletcher, but Mideline will be here in 1 second. I was going to start off, and first of all, just thank Wes and Grace and their colleagues on the Student Council for the opportunity to be here. I have to admit, I now think I may have figured out why Mideline and I are the last in line here, because we don't have a research project to talk about, as a matter of fact. What we have to talk about, I think, are opportunities for folks like you, the students at the Graduate School of Education, to support the terrific faculty like the ones you've heard here in disseminating and sharing both their research and their practical insights and ideas to help inform current practitioners in education. That's real, many of you have probably seen that tagline for the Graduate School of Education, right? We operate at the nexus of policy, practice, and research. Well, the Office of Programs in Professional Education, in my view, is the key portal to practice for the Graduate School of Education. We have the opportunity to interact with many, many practitioners at both the pre-K-12 and the higher education level. And that's what we wanted to talk to you about, because we need your help in being able to achieve our mission and really leverage the terrific work that all of our faculty here at the Ed School do. But before I do that, I just want to ask, I wanted to just do a little data collection here, because I have a hypothesis, and I want to see if some data I collect here will affirm or refute my hypothesis. So I want to ask you a question, and I want you to think about this honestly and respond as honestly as possible. If I were to say to you, the Office of Programs in Professional Education, or for those of you that are more into acronyms, PPE, how many of you, by kind of a show of hands, would honestly say you could give a semi-thoughtful description of what that is? I'm glad two of our key faculty up here are raising their hands, but you wouldn't have to don't worry, I'm not gonna ask you to do it now, but it is a unit, an office at the Graduate School of Education. How many of you feel like you could semi-articulate kind of what we do or what we're about? Okay, I'm glad the dean's raising his hand too, that's terrific. It's interesting, I mean, your data kind of supported the hypothesis that I had entering, the evening here. There were maybe 4 or 5 hands that I saw go up here, and I think that's why I'm so glad we're here and we were invited to be part of this evening. We are the place that help everyone that are essentially non-degree students. I mean, I view the Office of PPE, Office of Programs in Professional Education, essentially as sort of the continuing ed function of the Graduate School of Education, okay? The non-degree work, the many different non-degree programs, institutes, initiatives that we develop in the course of our work. So this is something that's also important for all of you to remember, because for all of you that are degree students here, when you go off into the world and are wildly successful, don't forget about the Graduate School of Education, because we will be able to serve your ongoing professional development needs in addition to the great education we hope you're getting in whatever degree program or concentration that you've chosen. And in that spirit, just wanted to give you a sense of what our work is and what PPE is all about as an overview. Using the 2013 calendar year as an example, there are 39 programs in the calendar year 2013 that we offered. Our office is structured into sort of 3 different sets of program offerings. A pre-K-12 set of offerings, a principal center. Actually, the principal center at the Ed School has been in existence for over 25 years as an organizational unit, directing professional development activities to the principalship. And there's another unit called the Harvard Institutes for Higher Education that actually has been in existence. It hasn't been called that for this many years, but for over 40 years. And the sort of antecedent of the PPE office was actually started in 1969. It was actually not even at the Ed School at the time. In 1969, the Ford Foundation gave Harvard University a very generous grant to create a leadership development program for higher education leaders at that time. And they were going to test a wild and wacky hypothesis at the time that the Ford Foundation issued this money. And the hypothesis they wanted to test was to see whether some of the ideas and theories that had been heretofore associated with business management, the theories of for-profit management and leadership, might have some relevance and application possibly to the management and the leadership of educational organizations. And a program was started for educational leaders to see if maybe they could learn something from the world of business on how to lead and manage educational organizations. Needless to say, in about 1 year, there was a clear identification of the relevance and the connection. The initial programs actually were all offered at the Harvard Business School. They were housed, located, delivered with business. I'm not sure we had Ed School faculty at that point that knew a whole lot about the leadership and management of educational organizations. It wasn't until probably a decade or so after that that there was a formal transfer of organizational responsibilities from the Harvard Business School to the Harvard Graduate School of Education, to develop a set of ongoing professional development programs for educational leaders. And we had kind of a critical mass of expertise and knowledge at the ed school to be able to take that work and those responsibilities on here. So there's a very interesting history, not just at the ed school, but at the university writ large, around the work that is now housed within the Office of Programs and Professional Education here at the ed school. In addition to these 39 programs that are residentially based, folks come here for anywhere from 2 days to 2-week experiences residentially at the ed school to sharpen their saw, if you will, as educational practitioners. We also offer 25 online courses through a unit in our office called Wide World that has a set of online professional development courses, and we're now beginning to actually create more blended programs that build on the online expertise of Wide and combine that in a blended way with our residentially based programs. We had in the past year about 3,500 participants. So when we think about the number of degree students we have at the ed school, multiply that by, I don't know what, 3 or 4 maybe, and we get the number of participants, students that come through our doors for ongoing professional development work through PPE. Last year also, in the delivery of these 39 programs, we need help. Many of our, Kay and David here and other faculty serve as educational chairs, or basically the bosses, if you will, the organizers, the creators of many of these program experiences. And in order to fully deliver those, we use the help in many cases of students, current students, recent graduates of the degree programs at the ed school. Last year, there were 76 HGSE students that we utilized to help deliver and support the delivery of one or other of these different programs that we offer. And that's why we're here. I'm an admissions person right now. I'm recruiting potential participants to help us and help our terrific faculty deliver these high quality professional development experiences. So if I've remotely wet your whistle about the opportunity to contribute to this, that's my big idea. So I'm going to turn it over to Middling now to tell you a little bit more specifically about some of the opportunities we may have to entice you to help us out.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you everyone for being here. Thank you for having us. Imagine the opportunities that you could have through programs in professional education. Imagine ways that you could build relationships with practitioners, network with them, support them while they're here, and many of them are in roles that you probably stepped away from to be here and pursue your dreams and pursue your big research questions. So, 4 main roles. The first one is, think about this, after a full day of plenaries right here in Askwith, our participants are bursting with ideas and energy, and they need someone who's really talented, who can really carefully facilitate a set of activities or discussions to kind of help them make meaning of what they've learned in the context of their work, and take really careful steps to make action steps for going back home and applying what they've learned. So the facilitator or small group leader role is about a 1-week-long commitment, and it involves experiencing the entire program along with participants. You're part of the instructional team. You work very closely with faculty. You're the eyes and ears of the program. And think about this, it's a really high-stakes endeavor that we're involved with at PPE. We have about 5 days to get it right. Most of our participants come to us through word of mouth, and I think most times we do get it right. Similarly, imagine yourself working online as an instructional facilitator, facilitating discussions with education officers from UNICEF, for example, from various education ministries. Imagine having access to their problems and what that would do to your questions as you develop your theses. We have 2 programs that rely on instructional facilitators, and this commitment is about 6 months. The first is Lesson, Leading Educational Systems Nationally, and the second is Equity, Quality, and Leadership in Education, which is a collaboration with UNICEF. So third, consider that many of our faculty, like Kay, like to create new material all the time. And so we need doctoral students to help us write cases and to pull together resources for participants to use while they're here. And so you might work very closely with someone like me, a portfolio director, or with an ed chair to pull together curricular frameworks from different parts of the world to help us think about how people pursue global education efforts. And that commitment is about 1 to 3 months. And then finally, you can imagine with nearly 40 programs every year, we have a ton of data that we collect concerning participants' experience while they're here, and increasingly, their experience trying to apply what they've learned when they get back home. And so we often hire, as we look at all of the data and we compare program X to program Y, and we think about how we can improve the participant experience in one program, interesting questions emerge. I was making an assumption several years ago, Joe will remember this, and I said, I think our participants prefer more interactive sessions. They always do, they always say they do. And so we hired a doctoral student to actually test that assumption. Was I right or wrong? Any guesses? I was wrong. Anecdotally, sure, they prefer experiences that are more interactive, but not in any kind of statistically significant way. So if you have questions or you're interested in any of these, playing any of these roles with us, please see me or see Joe at the reception. And I just want to leave you with this idea that, PPE is a very significant endeavor at the school. And in any of these roles, just imagine how you can contribute your talents, your skills, your research skills, your facilitation skills to the ongoing education of professionals. And I invite you to consider joining us in our mission to develop and deliver transformative learning experiences for education leaders and to transform organizations all over the world. Thank you very much.
One more last round of applause for all of our wonderful presenters. So before we transition to the next part of our event, which is a reception meet and greet, we as Student Council wanted to come up and personally thank you guys all. So if our presenters could kindly step to the front, and we have a little bit of something for you guys. Thank you so much. Felipe. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. So right now you can transition to Gutman Conference Center Area 2 and 3. There will be refreshments as well. Thank you so much, David.
Let's see. So that's here.
Yeah.
And this goes with me.